Hey, Julie. This is Lila again, and I'm gonna go ahead. We've had like 3 minutes or so, so I'm gonna go ahead and go back to your raw journal. This is gonna be raw journal number 6 for August 16, 2018, and I hope it's not too windy out here, causing too much additional noise or anything. But I guess if there is, I'll just have to record it, right? So let's go ahead and dive in. You got the mail a couple of days ago, and I remember that you came back with only an envelope from American Savings Bank that you said was yours. I just opened an account there, remember? Last night I found my mail on your desk. Good thing it wasn't my debit card. Ironically, though, it was just literature about the several overdraft coverage options available to me. So in some sense, I suppose it was for you. But this is a perfect example of why I have reservations about receiving my mail here instead of continuing to pay for my post office box. Perhaps I will see about opening a new P.O. box once my job commences. I could easily pop into Waikiki to pick up my mail there on my way home from work. I would have to continue receiving junk here, though, of course. The point is that I don't put it beneath you to strong arm my life to suit your needs. Now, that's kind of funny that I mentioned that because I think, as I've said before, talking about this job that was really temporary seasonal job at Macy's, that they somehow or for some reason never actually called me to come to an orientation and start with me. I think they called and he just told them never mind or something to that effect. He just never told me to call them back. Um, maybe not on purpose, right? It's out. The world may never know, right? So anyway, yeah. So I think like that's basically exactly what happened. I have had a sense that you try to control my work life for some time now. I mentioned yesterday in this journal that you basically yelled my way into getting the job at Safeway shortly after moving in 2016. Safeway is right across the street, and you used to go in an excessive amount, whether I was working or not. I know this because people would tell me when you came in, like I actually gave a fuck. You rarely came in to actually come talk to me, but sometimes for dumb reasons, like bringing me an ink pen. Really? I suspect. Oh, is that a new sentence? Okay, good. Okay, anyway. um, I had, because I was working at the Starbucks kiosk, right? So I would have ink pens in my apron, but I had like 2 or 3 aprons. So I guess like either it was like a day that he was doing laundry or something, and one of my ink pens was still in the apron that he washed, and so he brought me the ink pens from my apron. I, I mean, like you said, it was like any excuse. Right? Any excuse. So bizarre. Okay, anyway. I suspect, based on the fact that you insisted on walking me over there every morning and would often pop in just before I clocked out at night, that you would swing through just to see that I was really there all day. Which is really fucking paranoid, by the way. Why are you so worried about me? Right? So it was like after a while, because it was literally he would insist on walking me across the street. And it was kind of this awkward, like, the layout of the corner, right? It's like I said before, it's at an intersection of two pretty major streets in downtown Honolulu. And the building, though, has like a little yard on one side of it that puts it away from the main street. And then across the street, there's actually immediately on the corner, there was a little like small liquor store, like convenience store. And then the Safeway's parking lot and the drive area, and then the Safeway. So, like, in order to just get directly from the front door of the building to the front door of the Safeway, they were adjacent to each other, but it was more convenient to just jaywalk about like 15 yards away from the actual intersection than to walk all the way to the intersection and then cross and then walk back. Like it would make the walk 4 times as long as it needed to be because the street was just like 2 lanes. It's a one-way street, so it's only like 2 lanes wide and then 2 parking lanes on either side. So it's not far to cross. So everybody, I mean, it's like aunties and uncles who could barely still walk would still just jaywalk this. That's how easy it was to jaywalk. This man would insist on like doing weird crossing guard, telling me, "Oh, don't go yet." Like he acted like he had to tell me when it was safe to cross the street. And that was kind of like his weird excuse for walking me to work every day. And then, like I said, it's like we worked like straight up 9 hour shifts because it was a union job. So everybody's shifts were the same sort of 9 hour shifts. So like if I started at 8, he knew I would be off at 5. So he would walk me over there, and then at like 4:30, he would come over and he would kind of just like gingerly hang out over by the elevators because the Starbucks was in the corner of the store. And so he would just kind of like meander and mosey around in that corner for a while, like waiting for me to get off work. Or sometimes he would actually just come over and ask me if I wanted anything in particular or whatever, stuff like that. But it was just very strange. And then every once in a while, he would come over in the middle of the day for one thing or the other, but he would never come over to talk to me. But like I said, the other people would say that, like, would tell me that he came in. And it was always strange to me because it's like, a lot of people seem to have this mistaken impression that I wasn't just an employee of his, right? So it's like, and this is where things start to get a little tricky, yeah, because you get this stuff a lot with talking about, especially nannies, it seems, like nannies and like dedicated house staff. The people that employ them like try to act like they're members of their family and stuff like that, but it's like I'm not a member of your family. I'm just the hired help, right, in a weird way. So it's like even though I live with the guy, it's because he needs, quote unquote, needs like round the clock care. It's not because I'm actually his friend or I'm actually like a family member, family friend, lifelong known this guy or whatever. It's like I barely know him. He just one thing led to another, and when he felt like he needed help, he hired me to move in with him to help him out with stuff, right? So like I said, like the companionship services thing is legal under the FLSA, right? So it's like for all intents and purposes, technically this job is legal and it's a normal thing that people do here is a lot of this live-in work trade kind of stuff. But none of this adds up to or equates that I actually care about him enough to know that, like, oh, he came in and did shopping earlier. Like, I don't care, right? But then people will think I'm rude if I try to tell them, like, I don't care about this, right? And it's like when I'm off work from that, like if I'm over here working, it's because I'm like quote unquote off work from that job, right? Like he doesn't, like on my day off, he doesn't come over here to like buy our dinner groceries and then go home and tell me who was working in the kiosk. Right? Like, oh, so and such was working in the Starbucks. Like, even he isn't that weird, right? So there was this kind of strange, I don't want to like, not really like a cognitive dissonance, more like an environmental dissonance, where one side was making up for the other's lapse in judgment of what would be considered normal for me as far as like social knowledge, right? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just being an introverted bitch about it, but it was just like I don't like if I'm on my lunch break and he comes over there to like buy himself something for lunch, right? When I get back to the, I don't need somebody coming over and be like, oh, like he came in today, like while you were on your break. Like I don't care. Why would I care about this? And so that at some point, like because there was security in the store, the security guy was like, "He's not your boyfriend," and I'm like, "Why would that man be my boyfriend?" Right? That's like, no, he's not my boyfriend. Right? It's like I'm his caregiver. But then it gets weird because you have this issue of like, you shouldn't really be talking about people's like status when it comes to stuff like that, right? Like, I don't think I'm necessarily bound to HIPAA law, but like, which is like the privacy, whatever, the health insured privacy act, whatever the heck it stands for. But the whole idea that like your doctor can't just go telling everybody what's wrong with you, right? But it's like if for me to have to be there at Safeway and tell everybody he just needs he needs care, right? He needs somebody to be preparing him meals and cleaning his house and being there in case there's a medical emergency overnight because he won't be able, like if he has a heart attack or a stroke, he won't be able to call 911 for himself. They don't have a right to know that he has cardiovascular issues and stuff, right? They don't have a right to know this detail about this man. So it was just like, can somebody finally just kind of understand that like I'm employed by this guy? I am not his girlfriend or his niece or a friend or anything like that, right? It was just very strange. Okay, anyway, I think I've gone on about that long enough, but still, that was it's because it's one of the sorest spots about this was the degree to which other people like thought that we were personally involved somehow, and had a tendency to believe it, even though if he was telling them that. You know what I mean? But it's like at the end of the day, like I just said, like nobody deserves to be privy to his private medical condition information. So if people are going to be prying about the nature of the relationship instead of just minding their own business, you kind of end up in this like caught between a rock and a hard place where the only alternative to telling people all of his private business is to just let people believe that we have a personal relationship, which then isn't fair to me, right? So this was one of those. I really wish people would just mind their own fucking business. So if you don't take anything else from it, like just understand, right? When you're a nosy ass busybody, you could actually be putting people into precarious situations, right? Mind your own fucking business. All right. I saw you the day that you were in an argument with security and were asked to leave. Oh shit. Here we go. Okay, good. Because this is another one of my kind of favorite stories. All right. So now that I've given you all the background and how I actually personally feel about this one is an interesting one. Okay. I saw you the day that you were in an argument with security and were asked to leave. I had been working on the department schedule because I was the manager. So after I'd worked there for a little over a year, the manager, she left. She was a young girl and she was in college and she had started out like part time. And then when it was time for her to move to full time and all of that stuff and fully commit to school, she quit and they promoted me into her position. So I was managing the kiosk at this point. So my quota, like it's not really an office, but our computer for like ordering the stuff for Starbucks and all of that was on the opposite corner of the store. And I had been working on the schedule like this says. So just so like to, in mind's eye, just imagine this, the store is just a square, right? And the Starbucks was in one corner. And the break room with the computer for ordering the stuff for the Starbucks kiosk was in the opposite corner of the store. And then in the corner that was on the same side, just straight across from the Starbucks, was the actual management offices from the store. So when I finish the schedule, I have to walk through the produce department to the front of the store to put it in the store manager's inbox. Okay, so I had been working on the department schedule and happened to be walking towards the front when I heard you shouting. The incident was recounted to me by at least three different coworkers that day, all of whom were implicitly expressing concern about you in general. One of the themes seemed to be that they actually believed that I liked you enough to have quit my job over a petty indifference, or that I would hold them in lower esteem for some reason. That may have been the first time I indicated to them that I really only took the job there because of you in the first place and told them the true nature of our relationship. Right. So this whole, and I know I'm probably just getting ahead of myself again, but this incident then actually ended up kind of backing me into a corner where I had to explain to them because the person that he was in the shouting match with was the front end manager. And so when she mentioned it to me, it was almost like she was apologetic, like, like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't mean to make him upset. Like, if they don't want me to quit, they don't want this drama. And I'm like, girl, you just now happen to know why I have to work with him. He's just like that. That outburst that he had today, he does that all the time. That it's like, it's actually the other way around. I wish that I was getting enough hours and making enough money doing this job to be able to quit working for him and move out. Not the other way around. I'm not going to get upset and quit here because y'all had an altercation with him. I don't care about the guy. He's an asshole. So, anyway, one of the things that has truly deeply bothered me is the fact that you tell people that we are in a relationship and allow them to believe that it is romantic in nature. Or at least you seem to think that people believe this. This is completely unnecessary, and to be honest, I find it astounding when people believe it, and therefore even more astounding that you genuinely believe that it would make any kind of sense. Yes, I am being superficial-ish when I say this, but trust me, no one in their right mind would ever believe it. You just aren't the type of man that would have a girlfriend half his age in your current condition. I only mention this because it's a diagnostic curiosity. It's like when Anna Nicole Smith married J. Howard Marshall, but without the money. I'm half his age and twice his size. Like, this would have been Jack Sprat could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean. Like, I'm not a small chick. I'm even taller than average. This man was like 5'1" and a buck 05 soaking wet, and I'm over here at 5'9" and 300 pounds. There's absolute, and he's 70 and I'm 35. Like, there's no way in, like, I just can't even. Right? I don't have any, because it's like, even if it were the other way around, like, if he were a billionaire, why would he be dating me? And I'm not trying to denigrate myself or other large, beautiful women or anything like that. It's just like, let's be realistic here, right? There is no Punnett square, truth table, quadrant, schedule, whatever the fuck you call it, right? There is no combination given our appearances and ages. There's no additional qualities that you could have put on us one way or the other that would have made that shit make sense. That I could not believe the number of people that actually believed we were dating. I think they knew that they needed to just play along with his weird fantasy realm. Lord Almighty, absolutely, like, no, not on his best and my worst day. Like, it's just no fucking way. Okay, so this is going to shift gears a little bit. So I'm going to go back and actually then tell the story of what happened, because I don't think this ends up being anywhere else, but just in case, because it's kind of an interesting story. Like, so, and I don't elaborate because the what culminates from this happening is interesting as well. So he was yelling and shouting because you know how, like, when you're at the store and there's only like one checkout lane open and the line starts getting long and somebody opens up a new check stand, but then they just go and grab like the last person in line instead of the next person who would have been waiting to check out. Okay, well, anyway, what happened here was he was on his way to get in line when the front end manager opened up another lane, and then she, like, she like turned the light on, they have these little like stretchy bands that they would put across the closed checkout line so people didn't inadvertently get in them and stuff like that. So she opened up the check stand, and then she walked over to get people from the line to tell them to come over to her check stand. In the meantime, he saw this and he got in line and was standing there ready to be checked out with his stuff on the belt when she got back to the check stand register. And she asked him to kindly step aside for the people that had already been waiting in line. And he fucking lost it. Okay, because he's like, I'm already here. Like, you're open, I'm in your line. Like, what are you, like, blah, 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 blah. And so this is a perfect example when I say it's hard to tell whether he doesn't understand what's going on, right? Because I think most people have been familiar enough with this situation to understand, like, yeah, other people have been waiting in line already. And he just had a couple items because he'd just gone over there to, like, get himself, like, a can of tuna, a bag of chips, and a soda for lunch. He didn't have, like, a whole cart of groceries. It was just a few items. So when she asked him if he'd mind letting these other people who'd already been waiting go first, it wasn't like it was some weird major inconvenience. And so that he was screaming, yelling, shouting, whatever, and then the security had to get involved, and he was shouting at them, and yada yada yada. So when I got back to the kiosk, my like direct coworkers told me that he was here, and I told them, I was like, I was actually walking through produce and heard the whole thing, right? Oh shit! And then somebody else, I think, yeah, okay. So then I think I know the front end manager came and mentioned it to me while I was on my lunch break. So I think, like, after this, I might have taken my break. She came and she talked to me about it, and I told her what's what. And then later on in the afternoon, the HR manager, who was the one that I saw from the first episode, that I was like, I swear to God, that was just the HR manager from when I worked at Safeway. And it was, because then later on, after I was done recording and it was time to walk to the library, we crossed paths again and actually had a moment of smile and wave. It was definitely her. Um, so yeah, there's that. So she then, when she came in the afternoon, she would get a tea, and she mentioned it to me as well. And so I remember saying, I'm like, it'll be interesting to see if when I get home from work tonight, if he even says anything about this incident, because this is exactly the sort of story that he'd want to tell me if he actually believes he was in the right and wanted to gossip and go off about some shit. Not a peep. This man didn't say shit about this to me. Not a word. And I find that it was so out of character, right? It's so out of character. So I then got the glimpse of he is actually capable of self scrutiny and then realizing after the fact or understanding I probably should have mentioned that I made a scene in the Safeway today, because also knowing that at that point I would have known well enough what was going on that it's like I'm going to tell you exactly why you were wrong and you're lucky you didn't get your ass trespassed from the grocery store across the street. Right? I mean, think like, oh my God. All right. So anyway, all that means that was the whole of the story. I feel like that's a meaty story, right? So it deserved to go somewhere. And I don't, like I said, I don't think it ended up being fully told anywhere else, but I guess time will tell. One time Judy referred to you as your honey when talking to me, and I almost lost it. This is not the sort of thing that you gallivant around gossiping about without the other person's consent for any reason, especially when you could reasonably expect these people to intermingle. It's borderline sexual harassment, and it's definitely dumb. So, like, just because he told you I'm his girlfriend, she used to do this all the time. Every time I would run into her, she was like the president of their community room board, so she was always downstairs. And there was one morning I was on my way to work and she had stopped him to ask him something. And I was like, okay, well, I'll see you later. I'm just going to go ahead and head over there. I'm going to be late. And she stopped me and was just like, oh, no, no, no. He'll walk you over. Don't worry. This won't take a minute. And I'm just like, nobody even understands that I hate this shit or doesn't care. I hate that he walks me across the street. Like, I would even make comments about it when I would get there to my coworkers and be like, I really don't know why this man thinks he needs to walk me over here every day. It's so irritating and they're like, oh, he's just fond of you. Like, it's so, and I'm just like, the fact that I don't like it matters, right? The fact that I don't like it matters. I don't know who needs to fucking hear this, so I'm going to say it for a third fucking time in case you're not getting it, right? The fact that I didn't like it matters. It matters. It doesn't matter if you think that you're doing what's best for somebody or that what they're doing is not that serious or whatever the fuck, right? It doesn't matter. If I don't like it, it matters. If you have somebody that sends you flowers every day at your job and you know that it's your creepy neighbor who you've also found peeking in your bathroom window when you get out of the shower, right? Where you like some shit, right? When you tell the people at work, stop letting the floral delivery people deliver the flowers this guy is buying me. Send them back. He's a creep. Oh my God, I wish somebody would send me flowers. Bro, if this person doesn't like it, they don't like it. They have a right to nip some shit in the bud. Okay? Right? If I don't like it, that matters. Right? If you get told by somebody that so and so is their girlfriend, but you have no real reason other than them telling you that to believe it, maybe you should not believe it. And I know that might sound crazy and wild, but there's crazy wild people out there, right? 99% of the time it's probably trustworthy information. But to just go around to that other person then, because it works both ways, right? To just go around to that person and constantly refer and talk to them as though this person is their significant other is kind of strange too, right? You don't need to refer to him as Maya, right, as my honey, or your sweetheart came down here earlier and said that you had the day off, woo, or or whatever. Just use their name because you don't have any right to weasel your way in between our relationship with weird nicknames like that. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm tripping. I'm willing to be roasted for that opinion, but that just always rubbed me the wrong way that she would talk about him like that to me. It just bugged the shit out of me. Okay, anyway, it's very poor sportsmanship on your part as well, because as soon as someone asked me about it, the jig was up. One of the security guards at Safeway asked me about it one day, referring to you as my boyfriend. When I said that you weren't, he became very insistent that I tell him who you were to me. He continued to just go back and forth. If he's not your boyfriend, then what is he? It's none of your business, I replied, because it wasn't. It's no one else's business that you're nuts and need social support to survive. It's no one else's business where I live or where I spend my time at all outside of work, right? Like, it's nobody's business that I'm just your roommate or something like that, right? It's nobody's business, right? That to be asked, then what is he then? Then what is he then? It's none of your business is what he is. Luckily, other women in the store had reported incidents in which he had made them equally uncomfortable and he was, quote, relocated. So after that incident, I did actually report him to our HR about that because it made me really uncomfortable. And so we got a new he'd been the steady security there for a while, like several months at least, and then never saw him again after that because it's like you can't. There was that night too, I think, when I got off work, we were grocery shopping, and as we were walking over to get in the checkout line and he could see us, he yelled something like, have a good night with your boyfriend or something. Like he was still doing it. And so it was like, dude, this is weird and embarrassing and not cool at all. Like even because I feel like even if it were true, like it's weird, right? I don't know. Right. And I feel like sometimes it was almost like people knew that they were ribbing the situation. I know that I've mentioned this somewhere else too. I think it's already been in one of the other journals or anecdotes that but I'm not in on the joke. I don't think any of this is funny. And that's where I don't understand why people didn't get that this situation was actually pretty fucked up. Um, So yeah, I want to end this topic with the time you sent a ranting email to Safeway because my boss texted me at 5 a.m. looking for coffee filters. You got all bent out of shape simply because I mentioned that she had done this. I wasn't upset, more like confused that she couldn't find them or why she was even looking for them in the first place. Safeway sent you a $25 gift card. I confronted you about how fucked up that was, though, because it would reflect poorly on me at work, which it did. My coworkers didn't deserve to have to walk on eggshells in the course of doing their job because you might randomly get offended, contact the district office, and erroneously get people in trouble. Right? Like, okay, so now, like I said, it's like this guy is trying to get me fired. That's what he's doing at this point, right? It's like, okay, now it's time to get her fired. Like, okay. Helicopter in the sky, you are loud as fuck. Okay. You claimed that the phone call had woken you up. It wasn't a phone call, it was a text, and you steadily snored through it. You claimed that she shouldn't be contacting me like that anyway. It's how a job goes. It's not irregular in any way, and it's none of your business. Right? So and now I will end up taking that back later because they started to kind of abuse the ability to call and contact me when I was off work because even though I was the manager of the kiosk, I was still an hourly employee and what pushed me over the edge on this was I was on my day off. I went over to do our grocery shopping and I happened to be in there by myself. So I had my headphones in, listening to music as I was going through the store. And I ended up being cornered by the store manager, who then, because I was wearing wired headphones, when she saw my headphones, she was like, "Oh, so that's why you haven't been responding to me as I've been chasing you all over the store." And I'm like, "What do you?" And she wanted to know something about ordering more milk for the holiday stuff or something. It was a work related question, and it was just like, "Okay, look, you don't get to on my day off when I'm over here shopping as a customer." Chase me around the store screaming my name and then be angry with me for that being what happened because you wanted to ask an hourly employee a work related question on their day off when they were in the store as a customer. And so after what, it was like, you know what? These people are so unprofessional and strange. And what ended up happening was when I called them on the whole, you really kind of do need to stop using me as a default point of contact on my days off, calling me on my personal phone all the time to discuss work stuff because it's inappropriate because I'm an hourly employee. They asked me to step down because I was being insubordinate. Like Veronica would have a field day with that shit. I was like, I'm not being insubordinate because I am telling you that you are violating labor law by consistently and unnecessarily contacting. Like they would call me to ask me questions that the other people working in the kiosk should know. Like, where do you guys keep the such and such, right? Like if somebody um, was covering in the kiosk while the other employee was in the freezer pulling pastries for the next day, and they needed to brew coffee and they didn't know, like, just because this is an easy example, and they didn't know where the coffee filters were, they would call me, like they would use the store phone, call my personal cell phone to ask me where the coffee filters were instead of like going to get the person who would have known where the coffee filters were. It was, and it takes like what, 5-10 minutes to pull pastry, like it's not even that long of a time, so it's just one of those weird, like I said, like they were calling me for stuff that wasn't necessary to be calling me with too. There was definitely somebody there that could have answered the question. Or like if somebody was giving them a break, like instead of just calling the break room to ask the person that was there who happened to be on their break, they would call the manager of the kiosk on their day off on their personal phone. And then sometimes I wouldn't answer because I would be busy doing something else and they'd leave me nasty voicemails. Like, you need to call us back and answer our phone calls. And I'm like, no, I'm in the tanning bed at the gym. Go fuck yourself. Like, oh my God. Okay, anyway, I mean, for this time in my life, like, people are literally lucky I didn't snap. Like, I look at some of the stuff that grinds people's gears and makes people pop off and do crazy stuff, and I'm like, dude, it, this is a 2 on my 10 scale, and you are going like scorched earth, postal ballistic about it. Like, this wouldn't even phase me 5 minutes after it happened, and you're fucking making TikToks and thinking that people should get fired. I mean, absolutely crazy. You literally got bent out of shape over something that didn't even remotely concern you, and as a result, I was guilty by association. You stood there looking at me like you couldn't wrap your head around why I was upset with you, when the truth is, I have never in my life ever encountered someone that would have ever even had a shred of an idea, even remotely close to doing something like that. Absolutely, abnormally stupid thing to do, right? Like, you're gonna get me fired. And from a job that you literally got in my face, 4 inches from my own mouth, with your mouth yelling and raising your voice at me to get a job 18 months ago. You are now trying to get me fired from. I'm currently awaiting a phone call from Macy's about my job offer. I'm waiting for the standard background check to come back clean so they can officially hire me and I can start working. This morning I asked to borrow your phone so that I can call them to find out if there's been any progress. You said that they may have called and you didn't answer. I didn't say anything. I had no words. Utterly speechless. But I had a feeling that this might be the case because I don't think you like the idea of me working somewhere that you can't just pop in whenever you please. You obsessive little fuck, right? Or he didn't want me working anywhere at all, right? That, and I think once I got promoted at Safeway and I was working 40 hours a week and I was, um, he knew I was making more money. Oh, that's right. I did actually mention it to him after that fact, that I said something about, now that I'm making this kind, like the more money, that I might actually be able to move out in a couple of months. I just have to save up, and whatever. And he was like, "Why? Like, when you're doing so great here?" And it was like super weird because I was like, "I'm doing so great here. How exactly?" Being trapped in your apartment with you in this weirdly precarious situation. Because he was really nervous about it. So you know what, maybe he was actually trying to get me fired now that I think about it. I have now mentioned to you several times that I'm waiting for the phone call about my successful background check, and it is not unreasonable to believe that you know what a background check is, especially when it comes to employment. The lady I talked to told me that they are still awaiting the results, and not to worry, a manager will call when the results are received. I let her know that I can't trust the owner of the phone to actually answer or give me messages in a voice low enough that you didn't hear. You got up to collect your phone. I told you that she said they hadn't gotten a background check yet back yet, but that they would call me as soon as they do. You answered with something about the job not starting until Christmas, so maybe they just weren't calling already. This is one of the things about you that completely mystifies me. You insist that you can hear what's going on within a reasonable vicinity of yourself, but you never have a complete picture of what's going on. You are either lying about being able to hear or you are incredibly dumb. It's very bewildering. You would have to be incredibly dumb to believe that you're fooling anyone about being able to hear. So either way you work it, you actually tell people that you're dumb on a regular basis. So, right, so when I'm telling you, like, the lady literally said that they just don't have the background check yet. And he said, like, well, you probably won't start until Christmas. But it's like, bro, people are Christmas shopping prior to Christmas. Like, this job is obviously going to start before Christmas, right? Now, maybe he was thinking Christmas time, right? And it's like, this won't even start until the beginning of November. But that is not how the holiday season works in retail, especially on an island with such limited inventory space. Um, there just isn't enough time for everybody to be able to buy all of their stuff with the limited shelf space if we don't start selling Christmas stuff in August or like at Halloween at the very latest, right? That's why that happens here. I don't know why it happens anywhere else, but for sure people start with the Christmas at Halloween already for a reason, right? So I mean, just craziness, right? I just told you why they said they were like they wouldn't lie to me. Right, but maybe it was the lying, the fact that he knew he was lying. Like, even when they do call, I'm not even going to tell you. Right? Hopefully, you'll just forget about it. Whatever. Alternatively, you leave out important information when you attempt to convey things to others. A great example of this is the lotion incident from yesterday. Additionally, you have a suspicious knack for restating information verbatim that just came out of someone else's mouth or asking a question that was just answered for you. Rather than picking up on the fact that people are somewhat passive aggressively indicating that they can tell that you have a significant trouble hearing what's being said, I should say understanding them, right? That you have trouble understanding what's going on. Right? You have instead picked up the habit of using this phrase in situations where it makes no sense to do so. This is incredibly frustrating. The former is incredibly irritating. Great case in point, solving Wheel of Fortune puzzles. It's not statistically likely that you get the answer seconds after I solve the puzzle as often as you claim, and even if you do, I thought you could hear just fine what was said in the room. An appropriate response would be to acknowledge that the puzzle has been solved. Either you are repeating what you just heard, or you're an asshole who behaves strangely around other people. Actually, either way it goes, you're an asshole who behaves strangely around other people. It's likely to have an echo moment once in a blue moon, not twice an episode. You are hearing the solution to the puzzle, pausing for a beat, then repeating the answer you just heard in an attempt to make yourself appear smart. You have probably picked up this habit in order to hide your stupidity, being so stupid as to not realize that it's equally stupid to do this too often. Foot, meat, mouth. Like, how weird would it be if he was actually smart enough to figure out that if he just let people think that he was deaf, that he would then be able to just pretend he was smart by just repeating what the people around him were saying as though he's organically coming up with it himself. Like, it's just, there's a part of me that, like, that's some idiot savant shit. And I'm, like I said, once again, not trying to shit on neurodivergent people, just as a cliche remark, right? That he has this uncanny knack for figuring out how to stealthily hide how stupid he is, but it's still also not that stealth because if you can't hear, for someone who can't hear, you sure hear a lot. Um, yeah, foot, meat, mouth. There is something to be said for not being able to know you don't hear something because, duh, you don't hear it. This is why people say things that are intended to keep your attention to the fact that you aren't keeping up with the conversation. But as I said, instead of doing this, you pick up on the behavior intended to help you, then attempt to use it as a weapon later in inappropriate ways. These tendencies are the reasons that I believe you are self destructively narcissistic and dumb. Really, really dumb. It really is a rather unfortunate state of being, right? So, meaning just objectively, like it said right there's a difference between hearing, right, which is the actual sensical hearing something, right, the physical act of hearing it, and then there's listening and understanding. If you don't, you can't understand something you can't hear, right? So now we use those interchangeably, right? When someone knows that you said something, but they didn't hear you say it well enough to understand, and they'll ask you to repeat themselves, right? But he would almost never do that. He would just proceed as though he was cocksure that what he thinks you said was right, which is funny because he would end up revealing what he was expecting you to say. This is part of the whole Fight Clubby conspiracy theory element of this, right? Is like that he would have expected responses. And when I wouldn't give him the expected responses, he would say, like, he'd be no, what I'm saying is dot dot dot. And then I would know, like I know what you're saying because I'm not deaf and dumb. Like I can hear you and I know what you're saying. You just don't like the response. So he would say, no, what I'm saying is dot dot dot. Like, yeah, I know. And the answer is XYZ. And he'd be like, no, but because I'm saying dot 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 dot. And I'd be like, right. And the answer is still XYZ. I can totally hear you and understand you. So, yeah, I think that concludes this on somewhat of a high note. Oh, man. I don't know if I'm actually just tired or what, but that's enough for today, or at least for this one. I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.